Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Take Back My Brain. I'm your host, Laurie Hammer, and today I have with me again, Jeff Hoyt. Today we're going to talk about the benefits of zeolite, and I'm just going to ask him lots of questions, and we're going to see how the body detoxes and what, zeolite and detoxing and everything can do for the body. So thank you for joining me on this new podcast. And Jeff, thank you so much for coming back. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I love it. I love it. So I would love for you to give kind of like a recap of the product that you have and just kind of a little recap on detox first, and then we'll dive into more questions I have for you. Sound good?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the company is Zeolite Labs. So our specialty is zeolite. The product is ZeoCharge, which is just a supercharged zeolite. We've basically taken what we figure are the best products in the market and kind of combined them all into one. So you don't have to get multiple products to get the benefits of the kind of range of zeolite benefits out there. So we've got small particle sizes, we've got large particle sizes, kind of everything in between. And we've done case studies showing that not only is it a gut binder, but it can offer a full body detox. So it's been able to remove 15 toxic metals from the tissue level. So for detox, it's incredible, and a bunch of other benefits we're going to get into.
Awesome. Very good. So, and I've been using the product. So those of you know, I teach detox and have been doing that for quite a few years. And I love this product. It has made my detoxing much easier and I feel a lot better. So that's why I want to have Jeff back on, because it's an amazing product that he says combines three things in one, and it just has made everything easier for my clients and for myself. So I wanted to get into more of the benefits so people understand, like, what is zeolite really? Is it just a rock, or what do we do with it? So what are the benefits of using your product?
Absolutely. It's famous for detox. So most people that are using it to remove deeply stored metals and other toxic elements that have accumulated in their tissue over time. But the benefits go beyond detox. And a lot of the times when people are experiencing great symptoms relief, it's less of a detox effect and more of a something else effect. And that's what we're kind of going to talk about. But
right. I want to know the something else effect, because I've been detoxing forever and I know what that feels like, but this is different. This is different.
Yeah. And really, I kind of put the detox aspect of it into two categories: the binding and then the detox.
Okay.
So just the binding is going to be where it's going in and it's grabbing the circulating toxic elements, things that are just potentially just floating around in the bloodstream or in the gut, or just your body is actively trying to process. And those things, heavy metals, ammonia, mycotoxins, various toxic elements, are just making your body work harder than normal to stay in balance.
Right.
And the more you have, the more difficult it is for your body to keep balanced. And if you have other things going on, your body doesn't have enough energy to deal with it all. And those things could be causing symptoms and inflammation on a daily basis. So by taking ZeoCharge and it goes in and starts binding to these things that are just kind of exposed, it traps them, removes them from the body, and that relieves the burden on your body. So that's number one, can cause an incredible number of just benefit in itself. It's not necessarily detoxing the deeply stored metals, that aspect of it, but you're still feeling better and you're healthier because you're binding to things that your immune system is exposed to and attacking. Benefits that's binding. When I refer to detox, I'm really talking about your body releasing these deeply stored metals and toxins that are kind of in tissue that have potentially been there for a long time, that are generally tricky to remove. And that's where kind of we saw from the case studies is able to do that as well. So detox, binding, and then from there we can branch out and talk about the result of the benefits that come from both of those things.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the benefits that come from the binding and the detoxing.
Sure. So I'd say the number one thing, at least for me, is just the immune regulation or the immune calming effect. Because when you have these toxic elements that are just floating around, they're stimulating a strong immune response. And when you have a strong immune response, that results in inflammation. When you have inflammation, that results in a number of symptoms. And the problem is here, this is chronic or long-term inflammation or long-term immune response, because you've got these things that either you're exposed to on a daily basis, potentially living in a moldy house or a work environment that has mycotoxins.
Right.
Or it's just that your body, whatever you're exposed to, your body just can't process well, and it just can't keep up with, this is what I call the daily dose of toxins, the things that you're exposed to on a daily basis, which are from the external exposure, food, water, air, but also the internally produced toxic elements. And a lot of the toxins we're exposed to are actually made within our own bodies. These are things like metabolic waste products, like ammonia, which is a normal just byproduct of digestion. But if we're not able to keep up with it, it can become very toxic. And then we've got free radicals, we've got excess histamine, etc. So just by binding to some of these things, calming down the system, the immune system doesn't have to work as hard because it's getting the assist from the zeocharge. And at that point, the inflammation is going to be lowered because the immune response is going down. So just in terms of someone with a very overactive immune system, potentially with, like SIRS, mold toxicity, something, just taking the zeocharge often helps them feel better pretty quickly just because of the calming effect on the immune system.
Yeah, I will say that's what happened to me. And I was taking, other binders and things like that. But and I think maybe I mentioned last time on the podcast that we had some mold in our bathroom, actually 2 bathrooms, both our bathrooms. And so it took us a bit to be able to remediate those types of things. And so anyway, knowing that I was exposed to mold before, I kind of know what it feels like, and I could feel those symptoms coming on. And I started taking the zeocharge like at the perfect time, because it just kind of mitigated all of those symptoms. Like I just felt so much better. You know what I mean? And then in Iowa right now, usually during corn harvest, like I'm super sensitive to corn. And so during corn harvest, my husband's a farmer. So we're doing harvest. I just don't, I feel off, if that makes sense. I just don't feel great. Go riding the combine with him, those kind of things. I'm just like, I just don't feel great. Got headaches, those kind of things. And I would say since taking the zeocharge, that has taken that burden off my immune system from having to react to those things. So those are 2 examples I just wanted to share with people because they're pretty common. But I would love to talk about, what it's doing as far as mediating things or helping things in the gut, taking that burden off. We talked about ammonia for a little bit. A lot of people know about, the microbiome, and I did a whole series on gut health. And so hopefully my listeners are pretty up to date on those kind of things. So kind of dive deep into what is it doing in the gut?
Sure. And let me just first say that it is dose dependent. So and that's the problem, because some people will take a very low dose of zeocharge or another zeolite product or a liquid zeolite or something, and it'll actually have the opposite effect because it's kind of stirring things up, but resulting in more stress on the systems of the body.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
where it's key. So it can do it can either relieve the total stress load on the body or add to it, and that's where the dosing is key. So I want to just mention that up front. So you're saying, what is it? The question was,
what is it doing in the gut? Yeah. What's it doing to help the microbiome?
So it's binding. So, and just to recap, what zeolite is, it's a negatively charged mineral. It's a volcanic mineral. It's got this strong negative charge, and it's just binding to positively charged elements. So those are going to be things like the mycotoxins, the metals, and various toxins. And then it's a smart binder, which is important because it's not just indiscriminately grabbing everything it comes across like a lot of other binders and chelators. It's swapping the naturally occurring minerals it has for heavier elements. So that's why it's not going to deplete your essential minerals, because instead of just grabbing them, it's trading its magnesium for mercury, and it just swaps. That's until it finds the toxic element that it prefers the most. So that's what makes it selective, which is important as well. But it's binding to, just kind of depends on what you have in your body. There's so many things, some we can identify through lab testing, some we can't. We're exposed to so many chemicals, and it kind of depends on where you're living as well. Right now, in Iowa, so we've got all the farming chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, those things. And if you're in a different area, it might be a different toxic element. But then most of us, pretty much all of us, are going to have heavy metals as well. And especially if you've had amalgam fillings at any point in your life, you're definitely going to have leftover mercury from that. Just all sorts of stuff. So whatever is there, that's what it's going to be binding to, basically.
Got it. Yeah. So what amalgam fillings are, in case some people don't know, if you have silver fillings in your mouth, those are mercury fillings all the time. And so that's what Jeff is saying, is that mercury is leaching into your body. So the zeocharge can actually bind to those types of things. What was I going to say? I had a question about the gut again. Oh, the farming chemicals. What do you know? How well does it bind to, say, glyphosate or atrazine or those types of chemicals?
It's got, and we're looking to do a study on glyphosate just because there's
Awesome.
really not as much, but zeolite has been shown to bind to glyphosate.
Okay.
The studies are more for water purification though,
Mm,
because a lot of the studies on zeolite's used as a water filtration unit and to clean up the environment, and it's been used in nuclear disasters and various things. So a lot of the research is not even on humans. There's a lot of research on humans, but for glyphosate, definitely it has a binding capacity, but I
okay.
am not aware of any research showing, levels in humans, which is kind of tricky. It's just a lot of the toxicity testing is tricky in general
Right.
because we're looking at excretion. It's hard to know kind of what's stored versus what's being excreted. That's why the illegal scan is so helpful for the metals, but it's only testing metals. The
Hmm.
nice thing about Zeocharge is that it's got the direct and the indirect detox effects. So directly is just binding. It's able to chelate or bind to a number of toxic elements. But beyond that, we know it's able to get the body's natural detox functions working more optimally so the body just starts dumping things.
So
So
how
for
does it do
example,
that?
so it's just, I think it's because, so like for the case studies with the illegal scan, it was able to remove all 15 metals, but it was also able to remove fluorine and
Mm,
fluoride.
hmm.
So it doesn't have it does not bind to fluoride at all in the halogen group, but it still
Okay.
has the ability to lower tissue levels of it. So I think what's happening is just because it's doing such a great job of sopping things up that the body then says, now there's room to release these other toxic elements for excretion, where before it was just holding them in tissue because there wasn't room for detox because the body was
Right.
preoccupied with all these other stressors.
Right. So it's removing the interference, being like, say, the heavier metals, right? So removing the interference so the body then can do what it was designed to do and flush out the stuff it hadn't been able to. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's really the key to an effective detox. It's not about taking any supplement that's going to directly grab on to things deeply stored in tissue. It's about getting your body to the point where it naturally feels comfortable to release these things for
Hmm.
excretion.
Right.
That's really the key.
It's sort of like a traffic jam and then like a concentration gradient. I like to think that as like a traffic jam. And then all of a sudden, you have an opening and things can go, right? And then you have a
Yeah.
jam again and then things can go and a jam and things can go. Is that was kind of what's happening with the Zeo charge?
Yeah, I think there's just a certain amount of room that there's a certain threshold the body can handle of toxic elements kind of in circulation. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what I consider the level one on the 3 levels of detox. But there's a certain level the body can handle. And if that level just remains at its threshold at all times, the body's never going to start dumping the deeply stored stuff in there because it would put you over the threshold and it would cause a lot of stress on the body and symptoms. But by removing those toxic elements floating around in circulation, then the body now has room to release. There's somewhere to put the toxic elements.
Right, right. I love that. So let's go back to the gut for a minute. So how is the zeolite? How does that help with, say, like leaky gut?
Sure. So leaky gut there's a lot of contributing factors to it, and it's going to be different for each person. One, I know that anyone with autoimmunity is going to have some degree of leaky
Some
gut,
degree of leaky gut. Yeah.
right? So just right there, overactive immune system, this could potentially be very helpful for that. But for the gut in general, there's various protocols. You've got, the 4R protocols with, remove, replace, replenish, repair, this type of stuff. But a lot of times, I think the missing link in gut repair is really effectively removing the irritants that are destroying the gut lining, because
Yes.
you can take soothing, aloe vera and various soothing herbs to help repair the gut lining. But if there's something that's destroying the gut lining, it's never going to be an effective solution. It might help, but you have to remove the irritant so then your gut can naturally start repairing on its own. So, like you had mentioned before, removing the interference and then letting your body get back to the way God designed it, which is to heal as we
Right.
remove that interference. So,
Right.
for leaky gut, I think one, removing the toxic elements is key. And it's interesting because it can help people both that are experiencing constipation and diarrhea.
Okay. How so?
And I think it's just because both of those things can be caused by, they're both caused by some irritant,
Hmm.
whatever that may, and maybe there's a lot of factors that are involved, but if it's lowering inflammation in the gut, which I think is the main thing it's doing by removing these irritants and calming the immune system, things just start balancing, and then things normalize.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I know a question that's been on my mind for quite a while, and I think I may have asked you this when we didn't have the interview is, and I know you can't say a whole lot because, because of the powers that be or whatever, but what if somebody gets a substance injected into their body and, for say a certain immune response and stuff, does it help with, those types of injections?
So, and this is what I always tell people, because a lot of people are confused and they think, oh, it's okay to get the injections because I'll just detox after.
Correct.
That's absolutely not a good mindset to have,
Right.
because it's not about the metals and the other toxic elements that are in. I mean, it is about that, but that's not the main problem. The injections are training systems, they're software. They're training systems that are going in and training your immune system to react in a certain way. So going in after and doing a detox to remove some of the toxic elements can be very helpful, but it doesn't necessarily untrain the immune system.
Gotcha.
So it's, of course, better to make a great decision before that. So don't think you can just detox. But yeah, just at that point, if your immune system has been triggered and you've developed some sort of autoimmune event or inflammatory cascade or something, then taking the Zeocharge a lot of times has been helpful as symptoms relief, just because now, let's say you had a little bit of yeast overgrowth and microbes, and you had a number of issues, but they weren't problematic before because your immune system was kind of leaving them alone. They were just naturally balanced. But now you've activated your immune system and it's hypersensitive. So now it's attacking everything that was previously in your body, not causing an issue. Now it's an issue. So now you have to work even harder to remove those symptoms. And Zeocharge can go in and bind to a number of the toxic elements that are causing the strong immune response. So once again, back to the immune system, it can definitely help calm it down.
It's taking that burden off.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of the newer injections for, post 2020, they're a little bit different. They're not really traditional.
Right.
So there's less metals and there's more, genetic modification. So it's a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole new retraining program for the immune system.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a number of people claiming it can help. I have no idea. I think in general, it's a good idea for everyone, Zeocharge, just because it helps with so many things. So even if it's not directly helping, just whatever else it's doing in the body to relieve stress can help your body better handle that situation.
Sure.
But
and
things like
interferences. Yeah.
Yeah, but things like graphene oxide, it's been proposed that Zeolite can bind to that. There's spike protein potentially. It's hard. I don't know. I don't have any proof on that, but
not enough data yet.
Yeah, and it seems to be hit or miss as well. So it's not like the cure all or anything like that, but it's as I like to refer to Zeocharge as a foundation. It's not the only supplement that you ever need to take. It's a great foundation because it sets the framework, one, for detox and just for calming the system. And then you can build upon your protocol, whether it's a detox protocol or a gut healing protocol or an antimicrobial protocol, whatever the protocol is. I really like Zeocharge as a foundation to that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm finding out too. And it people seem to respond to it really well because of the dosing that you have discovered, the high dose effect of it. People just don't have reactions to it, which is super exciting. Another front on, taking that burden off of the immune system. What if people have sort of, a growth somewhere in their body, that, they've been trying to do treatments for, or they haven't been able to get to shrink? How does Zeocharge play a role in that?
Sure. And, of course, this is not medical advice in any way, but
exactly.
Right. Yeah. We gotta throw that out there. But Zeolite in general, there is research indicating potential benefit for those growths, especially in dogs and in animals. Actually, is more research done. There's potential enzymes it's inhibiting, potentially direct anti-tumor effects. It just kind of, I don't know exactly the mechanisms, but I'll give you one potential benefit of it for someone with a lump in their breast.
Okay.
Now, we know that, and I won't say the word, I don't know if we can say that, but lump in your breast, back to ammonia, because I talk about ammonia a lot, which
ammonia
is
huge. So I'd love for you to talk about that. Yeah.
So ammonia is incredibly toxic to your cells, right? Kills cells, incredibly toxic. Yes. But there was a study shown that ammonia actually, the breast lump can feed on ammonia. It's actually a fuel source. So while it's toxic to your healthy cells, your toxic cells potentially are using ammonia as a fuel source. So just by removing that extra ammonia, that alone, it's going to help, one, stop it destroying your good cells, and then stop feeding the bad cells.
That's
So that's
awesome.
one example. Another one is just with antioxidant capacity, because we
Uh-huh.
know anyone that has an issue with their growth has a lot of oxidative stress,
Correct.
cellular damage, accelerated aging. And basically the formula is you have free radicals. These are unstable molecules that are wreaking havoc on the body, causing damage. When your body can't keep up with the demand for free radicals, that results in accelerated oxidative stress.
Mm.
It's controlled by something called total antioxidant capacity. That's your body's natural ability to combat these things.
Correct.
So when you have oxidative stress, you get all these issues. So zeolite is actually a very unique antioxidant. And antioxidants, what they do is they go in and scavenge or neutralize free radicals. So
Mm-hmm.
traditionally, people would take vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A, resveratrol, curcumin, some sort of antioxidant. And what they do is they go in and they donate an electron, which basically neutralizes or scavenges the free radicals.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of how, when we think of antioxidants, we think anti-aging. What
Yeah.
they're doing is scavenging these free radicals, and we're trying to prevent the oxidative stress from occurring. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why these are used in a lot of protocols. Zeolite is a very unique antioxidant in that it can actually trap the free radicals in its cage. So it's one of
Okay.
the things it binds to. So opposed to donating an electron, it's just binding to the free radicals. But in addition to that, it can help with antioxidant capacity in two additional ways. One is to remove the source or some of the sources of the free radical production.
Okay.
Because when we have heavy metals and we're exposed to radiation and mycotoxins and all these toxic elements, they're resulting in an increased production of the free radicals, which is accelerating our cell damage.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take the antioxidant supplements, it can be helpful, but we're not getting to the root cause. When we
Got
take
it.
zeolite product, one, we're directly scavenging, but we're also helping reduce some of the causes of the free radical production. And then the third aspect is getting your body's total antioxidant capacity as high as possible. Because the higher that is, and that's just your body's natural ability to handle it, the higher that is, the more free radicals you can handle without oxidative stress occurring. And
Got
we
it.
know that things in that system of your body, the total antioxidant system, are going to be things like superoxide dismutase, SOD,
Mm-hmm.
glutathione, peroxidase, and
Yeah.
your vitamin C, vitamin E, these things. And we know that zeolite can actually improve levels of all those things. Glutathione,
Mm-hmm.
SOD, studies done in chicken showing that it improves those. But
Yeah.
also in our case studies, we showed that it can improve levels of vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin D. So these things that are going to help combat the free radicals. So it's kind of a three-prong approach there for oxidative stress. In any chronic condition, you're going to have an accelerated level of oxidative stress. It's just kind of
It
it's
just is.
just
Yeah.
there. So just by reducing that, could be incredibly helpful.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So let's talk about vitamin D since you brought that up. Because you and I were talking and again, like, so I'm a practitioner. I have people take vitamin D, and things that I'm learning as we're detoxing is that, lead will prevent the absorption of vitamin D, or mercury will prevent the absorption of vitamin D. So what are you seeing in your testing? Because last time we talked the fact that you do an oligo scan, which is tissue testing for heavy metals. What are you seeing? People who take a ton of vitamin D are their tissue levels actually changing? Because they'll change in the blood, but are they actually changing where it really, really matters?
It usually not, and it just depends. So the blood is different because the blood's what's floating around. If you take a vitamin D supplement, it's naturally going to raise the blood generally. But a lot of the people will get both tests. They'll get a serum vitamin D and they'll do the oligo scan tissue vitamin D, and the blood levels are high. And sometimes their doctor or practitioner will say, stop taking it because it's too high. But then we look at the tissue level and it's low. So it's not necessarily making its way into the cells or into the tissue. And sometimes your body will kind of hold on to things in the blood to try to force it into the cell. And that's common with some other nutrients as well. Your body builds them up because of a true deficiency. It doesn't mean there's an excess. And
Got
what
it.
we found is really the key to raising the tissue levels of vitamin D. Now, first I'll say having a higher level of serum vitamin D is still usually good because you have it there for immediate use. So it's not that the vitamin D is not helping at all.
It's not
It's just
being wasted. Yeah.
right. It's just some of it maybe, but it's there for immediate use. You want that reserve of vitamin D in the tissue.
Okay.
You want that to rise. So what we found is in order for that to the level to be enhanced, you have to remove the underlying toxicity. And a lot of times it's mercury. There's a huge correlation with mercury, where as the mercury starts decreasing, the vitamin D just rises. And these are people that have been taking liposomal, vitamin D3, K2, or doing UV, like a UV vitamin D therapy, or injections, or whatever they're doing for vitamin D, going in the sun, of course, naturally, all these things, and they're just not raising the levels. Then they take the Zeocharge, it reduces the mercury, and all of a sudden their vitamin D level just spikes.
Interesting.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of amazing.
Yeah. So people like with osteoporosis, that would be really key then, right? Because if you can't get into the tissue and the bones because of the mercury,
Yeah.
you can take all the vitamin D you want, you can take all the calcium you want until you clear off the cell receptor sites, right? You have to fix the cell in order to get well. So until you remove that interference at the cellular level, it's not actually going to help that bone remodeling process and all those types of things. Am I on track there?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and that's another really strong benefit of Zeolite is bone health,
Okay.
right? For various reasons, because there's a lot that goes in to, osteopenia, osteoporosis, just not ideal bone health. And one is going to be, it's always going to be, mineral imbalance on the bone, but also usually metal toxicity resulting in the minerals not being in the bones where they need to be. And then you've got hormonal imbalance, and you've got all sorts of issues. But because a lot of the case studies were done on individuals that have osteoporosis, actually, and they're seeing on their DEXA scans that their results are actually improving now. People that were stuck before,
Right. And
just
they were
due to
told that
their
that won't improve, right? You can't, unless you take Fosamax or something else, it's not going to improve.
right.
Yeah.
But when they started the detox protocol by removing, and a lot of times these people have high levels of cadmium, which cadmium will fight for space in cadmium stores in the bone, for one.
Where are you going to get cadmium?
Cadmium, one, tobacco. So if you've ever smoked or used
Smokers.
tobacco products, but all sorts of stuff. Cadmium is going to be in plants and chocolate. And it's all about your natural detox function. That's really the key. Because if you're have been exposed to just a tiny bit every day, which is normal for 30 years, but your body's not processing it and getting it out, over time, that's just going to accumulate.
Sure.
If as it comes in, it's leaving, it's not an issue. So a lot of people get the results and they say, where do they get all this cadmium or, these metals? It's not necessarily that they have a terrible exposure in their environment. It might just be because their detox pathways have been impaired for 30 years and they've slowly been accumulating.
Slowly accumulated that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So cadmium, lead stores in the bone. Lead will interfere with calcium absorption, cadmium with zinc, aluminum stores in the bone, and it messes up silicone, all these things. So really, if you take these mineral supplements, a lot of times they're not as helpful as people think, because they're not getting into the cell or where you really need them for proper utilization until you remove the interference.
Oh, we lost him just for a second. Jeff, come back. Awesome. So we had a little glitch with the Wi-Fi. But we're back. We're going to finish this conversation with Jeff Hoyt, and we were talking about bone health. So let's pick up where we left off, Jeff.
Sure. Yeah. So I was just saying that just a lot of people are taking mineral supplements and doing various strategies to help improve bone health, but a lot of times they're limited without removing the underlying metal or toxic element that could be competing for space with the necessary nutrients in the bone. So step one is removing the metals, cadmium, lead, aluminum, these various things, and then the nutrients start absorbing on their own.
Right. So then you have this case where people are like, well, my bone health isn't changing. I did my scan again. And so they're taking more calcium, more calcium, more calcium. And it's not getting into the bone because of the toxicity at that cellular level, at that deeper level. And so then your calcium has to go somewhere. And that's when we're getting, calcium deposits where we don't want them, right? And so it's really important for people to understand bone health. People are afraid of getting osteopenia, osteoporosis, that it's really a toxicity issue going on the body, and not the fact that your body doesn't know how to absorb those minerals and that you need to take mega doses of them. It's the fact that you're toxic. And so you have to release that burden, take that burden off the body correctly. You can't just go out and take any zeolite product. You can't go out and just take any detox, because that's not going to work. You have to be very, very targeted, and so that your body can actually function and let go of what it needs to let go when it has the opportunity to.
Yeah. And it's less about, it's not just about what's coming in your body. It's about what your body is doing with those nutrients when it's in there.
Right.
So that's kind of the
Right.
key. And just on calcium, I will say there was one lady, and her example is on the case studies page, and she did the illegal scan and had, severe osteoporosis, severe structural, like pretty severe issues. And she was working with another functional practitioner who didn't want her on the Zeo charge. So I said, that's fine, we'll do the scan. And she did her protocol. She was taking an ionic calcium supplement that was over $1,000 a month, along with a bunch of other detox stuff and, very, very expensive, thorough functional medicine protocol. And we tested her. We had her retest after 3 months of that protocol, and her calcium was very low on the test. Her
Right.
calcium, not only did it not improve after 3 months of that very expensive protocol, including calcium, it actually got worse.
Oh no.
So I said, man, I told her, we're really going to have to remove the lead for the calcium to absorb. And we didn't know at the time, but she then remembered that she was actually lead poisoned as a child, where she was in
Oh
the
wow.
so like when she was 6 or something, she was in the ER for 2 weeks with lead poisoning. So definitely an issue. But then I said, okay, now let's try the Zeo charge. So then she starts on the Zeo charge while continuing on everything else she was doing. She just added the Zeo charge. We retested her, and 2 months later, calcium levels are now improving.
Wow.
So she could have continued on that calcium. Now, she was experiencing some benefit from that protocol. I will say that. It's not that she wasn't feeling a little better. It's just that her calcium level was not moving at all, which
Sure.
was key.
Sure.
We added the Zeo charge, which started reducing lead and other toxicities or whatever else it was doing. Now the calcium is improving. So that's kind of
Right. And then the protocols can actually work better because
exactly.
you remove the burden, you remove that interference from the body. That's what I love. I love
Yeah.
about this. This is
It
so
goes
good.
back. It goes back to Zeo charge being a foundation, a great foundation.
Right. Right. Well, let's talk about deposits in the brain. With the rise on dementia and Alzheimer's and all those types of things, how does zeocharge really affect the brain?
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of things that can affect the brain. One, just toxic elements that are physically being stored there. And then
Mm-hmm.
two, toxic elements that are elsewhere in the body that are resulting in an inflammatory process, which could result in inflammation of the brain, even if they're not necessarily in the brain themselves.
Right.
So we want to remove toxic elements from basically everywhere in the body, starting with the circulating stuff. And this is where it kind of gets into the dosing, the importance of dosing, because we want to have enough zeolite to bind to everything floating around and then have leftover to kind of get to the layers of the onion.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of neurodegeneration and just brain health, for one, we'll start with the basics, brain fog. Well, maybe we start there. So
Mm-hmm.
things like brain fog, a lot of people will experience reduced brain fog pretty quickly when taking Zeocharge. Now,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's from actually removing toxic elements from the brain, I don't know. It's probably more likely that it's just binding to inflammatory, things that are causing inflammation, and it's reducing the brain fog. Whatever it's doing, even ammonia. Ammonia travels to the brain and is neurotoxic. So whatever it's binding to, helping brain fog. In terms of toxic elements that store in the brain, we have, classic examples like mercury, which I think is probably potentially the most toxic.
Right,
Um,
because mercury has an affinity for the brain. It likes fatty
yeah,
tissue. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So mercury, yeah, goes straight to the fat. And the challenge, why a lot of people have so much mercury in their brain tissue is because of, like we previously discussed, these silver amalgam fillings in the mouth. And
Mm-hmm.
what they call them silver fillings, but they should probably be called mercury fillings.
Right,
Because
because there's no silver in that. They're just
well,
silver color.
there is silver. It's there's just as much mercury as there is silver.
Right, right. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
they like to call them silver because if they said we're going to put mercury in your mouth, people might say, wait, why are you going to do that? But when they say we're going to
Right.
put a silver filling, it sounds better. But yeah, they're about 50% mercury, 50% silver. And interesting, on the oligo scan, which is the tissue test, we see people that have the fillings or have previously had them and had them removed. They have very high levels of both mercury and silver. And usually
Sure.
the silver and mercury levels are pretty aligned, which is kind of interesting because there's about 50% of each. So the problem there is just proximity to the brain. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
have the mercury in your teeth, and you're brushing your teeth, you're drinking hot tea, coffee, these things, and you're vaporizing the mercury over time, you've had these things for years, you're getting tiny bits of mercury vapor that are looking for the closest fat deposit, which just so happens to be your brain. So now you
Right.
get little bits of mercury accumulating in your brain over time, and we know that it's incredibly toxic. So we've got, there's like Boyd Haley, did a lot of research on it. He was a biochemist researcher at University of Kentucky.
Mhm.
He was doing research into Alzheimer's, just looking for, solutions and causes and various things. And at the time, he discovered that mercury was the only single element that could cause all six characteristics of Alzheimer's. And
Right,
this was
right.
kind of a huge discovery. Now there's a number of other things in combination that can cause it. And of course, we have blood sugar dysregulation and various things that can contribute. But he discovered that that was really a key driver in Alzheimer's. And he
Mhm.
discovered that Alzheimer's never existed before they invented the fillings and started putting them in people's mouths. And they
Isn't
could,
that interesting?
and you can tell, because we can't blame it on laboratory testing, because it's pretty easy to identify an Alzheimer's brain in an autopsy because it's shrunken. It's about
Right,
25% smaller than a normal brain. And they've been doing autopsies for hundreds of years before this
right.
technology caught up. And the shrunken brain was never recognized until, I believe it was the early 1900s. And it was the first generation of people that were dying after they started putting the amalgam fillings in people's mouths in the 1840s or 50s. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a connection there. And then we just had this boom. And there's a lot of contributing factors, of course, but mercury is one. And I mean, it's undeniable, in my opinion, at least, that the fillings are leaching mercury into your body, because
Mm-hmm.
we can see it from the illegal scan. People that have the fillings, they have the mercury and they have the
Right,
silver. Silver is less
right.
problematic. It's not really a problem, but the mercury is a problem.
Sure,
And the
sure.
interesting thing is, a lot of these, not a lot, but some of the people had their fillings removed 20 years ago. And they figured,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're good. We test them, they still have incredibly high levels of mercury and silver. Because what they did was they removed the exposure, but they didn't remove the internal accumulation of the mercury just by removing the exposure. And the mercury
Right.
just sits there. The body's not really processing it. It's in the fat tissue. And it goes back to just the natural detox. Once it's there, the body usually doesn't want to release it because it would cause so much stress on the way out. And the body's so focused on short-term survival that it will sacrifice long-term organ function. So the
Right.
body
Yep,
says,
that
I
makes
can
so much sense.
survive. Yeah, the body, in the body's opinion, it says, I can survive with a shrunken brain, but if this mercury is released through detox, my immune system will attack it so hard that it could cause terrible symptoms. I might not be able to make it through. So
Right.
that's the
Yep.
problem, why once you have stored metals, it's very difficult to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just
It's
challenging.
not a fast process if you do it correctly.
No.
Otherwise, you'll get really sick. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing when people say, oh, I'm getting these detox reactions, which means the protocol's working. In fact, it means it's working inefficiently, and you're probably really not detoxing much of anything at all, because you've stirred stuff up, but then your body can't handle the process. That's what the detox reaction is a sign of, that your body's
Right.
struggling with that circulating load. And then your body's going to say, okay, we're going to stop releasing. And then the detox is over. And a lot of times what's happening with those reactions is we're just doing everything in level one. We're stirring stuff up. We're disrupting biofilms. Microbes are involved. You've got histamine release, various things. You assume it's from releasing deeply stored metals. It's potentially, you haven't touched those at all. It might just be
Mm-hmm.
level one. And that's why you can continue getting detox symptoms for months on a detox product, assuming it's working. It might really not be detoxing at all.
Right. And that's super frustrating. So,
Yeah, and it's surprising. That's really what we learned through the case studies program. The point was to see if Zeocharge worked and that it was effective, which was great to know that it is and it does. But the next thing was just how hard detox is. I didn't
right.
realize personally either how difficult it actually is to detox, because the body tends to resist detox, especially if you've had the metals for a long time. Your body is comfortable and it's scared to release them, and you have other complex issues. It's much easier to detox a healthy individual than someone that has more of a complex health challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the
Completely. So yeah,
challenge.
you have
Yeah.
to deal with kind of the surface issues um, before your body will ever let go of anything deeply stored. Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of times the chelation therapies that are specific for heavy metals are somewhat limited when it goes beyond just circulating metals, which they're great for, because they're not working on the other toxic elements present. And you're not able
Right.
to remove enough of the room in circulation for your body to naturally start dumping these metals.
Yep.
That's why I think
Yep.
Zeocharge is so effective, because it's a broad spectrum detox binder.
Right, right. So I love it. I love it, Jeff. This has been a fabulous conversation. I think we could talk forever and ever. And so we'll have to have another conversation. So thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to add to anything that we chatted about today before we let our listeners go and come back another time?
I mean, I think we covered a lot. There are additional benefits. So some of them you can find on the website, just on the product page. I mean, things like weight loss, that's an unexpected benefit a lot of people experience. People experience nutritional balancing. There's a lot of things, but it's really broad spectrum. But I encourage everyone, if you haven't tried Zeolite before, or if you have tried it without success, try ZeoCharge and try it at the right dose. So talk to
Right.
Laurie.
That's the important thing, is
Yeah.
at the right dose, because there's a lot of zeolite products out there, and some of them, very good, I've used over the years. However, um, not at the correct dosing is what I'm learning. So I've really enjoyed this second conversation we've had, and we'll have to do it again, because I feel like this is key to overall health. And if we don't understand this, I always talk about you have to fix the cell to get well. Well, we have to make sure we have the right products to fix the cell in order to get well. So, and I really feel like ZeoCharge is on the forefront of that. So thank you, Jeff, again, for this amazing conversation. The link will be in the show notes so that you guys can, check out Jeff's website, the case studies, all those types of things. Use the code Laurie Hammer for 10% off. And we'll have Jeff back and have some more conversation. So thank you all for joining today. I appreciate you. Stay well, stay healthy, and I will see you in the next episode. Stop.